Hi, this is Andrew Smith, instructor at Ferris State University and runner of art by Smitty.com. This is going to be part 5 in my DOTA 2 workshop tutorial series. We're going to go over the high poly sculpting workflow, going from 3ds Max to ZBrush and getting our final high poly model ready before we go and create a low poly and bake textures. If you're just joining us and you're interested in how we got this far in the process, you've got 4 other parts to go check out, so I encourage you to do that if you're not too familiar with the whole pipeline of getting an item into DOTA 2, I'm trying to go over this stuff in detail. Now, recapping a little bit, this is the item that I ended up concepting after going through all of the sketches and the concepting process. In the last part, we modeled this bad boy, but I was talking to a previous scholar, and he was telling me, like, hey, I like the idea that you're going for, but Valve's pretty picky about what they put in their engine, and if you plan on doing a whole set, you might want to change the way you're going about this a little bit. I don't plan on going through the whole process of creating the entire set, but who knows what will happen in the future. Things are always changing. So Clifton was telling me, hey, there's, he plays the game more than I do, and he said, hey, there's this item called the Bloodstone that could possibly be used for these glowing parts in the sword. So, I think that's kind of a cool idea. We want to keep that rugged animal primal look that Bloodseeker has. Now, he has an ability apparently called Thirst, and essentially these blades could light up whenever he enables Thirst. So that's kind of the route I'm taking when I did the high poly sculpt. So thank you, Clifton, for that little input. Here's Clifton's website. Feel free to go and check it out if you guys have time. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start up 3ds Max 14, and from here, this is where we left off last time. The last video, we basically broke this guy into different pieces, and this is essentially the final item that we came out with, where we were playing with smoothing groups, and I got somewhat even topology going everywhere. So essentially what I'm going to be doing now is coming up here, and I've installed the GoZ app, so I'm just going to go Z real quick, and this is going to bring me into ZBrush. It's going to bring that model directly in ZBrush without me having to go import, export, etc. I'll hit Command to get rid of Lightbox and click and drag in my scene to draw the light blade out. I'll hit T to go into edit mode, and I can start navigating in space. I'm going to also hit P, so I'm actually working in perspective view. I don't really care for working orthographic unless I have to. So here's our weapon. If I hit Shift F, I can see the wireframe. Everything's looking good. I came in with different polygroups, but I want to go through and just, I want to split a few of these up a little bit more. So I'm just going to check it out real quick. So that's one polygroup. This guy's one polygroup. And this is one polygroup. So with just this hidden, I want these to be separate pieces. So I'm going to go to polygroups, auto group visible. And then from here, I'm just going to go and hide these parts and say group visible. Coming through and just hiding these guys again. Essentially now I'd like to go ahead and make group those. Oops, group visible. There we go. And okay, so it looks like we're actually good to go for this part. So next thing I'm going to do is come up here. It's all one subtool right now, and basically what I want to do is I want to split this up into separate subtools. I could come over here and just say mask by polygroups completely on. That way when I'm sculpting or starting to move this, whatever polygroup I select first is what it's going to move. It's not going to affect the ones around it. If you want, I embedded that in my interface. If you want to do that, you just need to go over to your brush settings and find it there. But I'm not going to get too much in detail. Now, the reason I want to break this apart is because I need to have different, this part here with more polygons, it's going to subdivide a little bit differently than this blade, which has a lot fewer polygons. And it might not have fewer, they're just spaced apart further. So I'm going to go down here to, let's see here, I'm going to go to Subtool, Split, and then from here, and actually we want to go to Group Split. Say okay. So let's put all these into their own polygroups, and I'll hit basically I'll turn off my wireframe really quickly. Come in here with something like, I might come up here and find the /3. There it is. And as you can see right now, if I try to come in here and make little slashes, it's just not enough geometry. So coming down, I'm going to subdivide this, Control D a few times. And actually, see how it's kind of losing its shape right there? I'm going to undo this. I'm going to go to the Geometry tab, make sure I turn off Smooth. And I'm going to divide this a few times before I turn it back on. That way it's still smoothing out a little bit, but it's not killing the shape that I had. And I actually kind of like the effect. Making this a little bit smaller. It's still not enough subdivisions. I'll do it again. Cut that. Still not enough. Control D one more time. That's enough. That's good. I like to preview it with the normal shader and just see what the normal map might look like. So that should be enough detail. I believe this weapon has like a 256 or 512 texture map or something. So what I'm seeing here is going to be perfect for that kind of texture map. That's what I like to use that normal shader for. So that part's good to go. From here, I need to come over here and start doing the same thing. Again, making sure that smoothing's off for the first few times I subdivide it, then turning it back on just to get some nice smoothness in the corners. And just checking it and seeing how I can sculpt. So that needs a few more subdivisions, and that looks good. Some of that one's around 400,000, and that's fine. So essentially what I want to do is I want to keep going through all of these pieces and doing the subdivision technique where I can sculpt enough detail on them to do things like a few chips and grabbing my high polish brush and coming in here and smoothing parts out. So some of the techniques I'll be using is this slash brush. Another nice one that I like to use is it's going to be the crumple brush right here. So this is kind of nice. It's kind of like the high polish a little bit, but it's essentially going to give me, if I really hit it in some areas, it's going to really start to just kind of, add some craziness there. After that, I like to come back with the high polish brush and just kind of smooth it out a little bit. This is a little bit extreme, and it looks pretty terrible. The name of the game with this kind of sculpting is just subtlety. Okay, and in fact, with my final high poly, I felt like I went a little overboard with some of the cuts and dents and whatnot. But the idea after listening to Clifton is I wanted to make instead of having it feel like it was plasticky, I wanted it to feel like it was made of stone. So that's why I wanted to give the shout out to Cliff, is because I kind of changed the look of certain parts of the blade based on some of the history behind the Dota stuff and some of the lore that you'll find. Okay, from here I'm going to go ahead and just speed up the time lapse and just kind of do a video commentary over the top. So I'll see you there. Okay, so at this point I'm just kind of coming in and taking the high polish brush and just kind of really focusing on smoothing out the corners, making them feel like they're kind of starting to feel like stone and not just a super polished, perfect metal or plastic. I really want those inner parts to feel like stone, and I'm just kind of visiting all the assets, smoothing them out, getting them ready for sculpting. I haven't really even started the sculpting process quite yet. I'm just making sure that this is there's not super crisp mechanical edges where I don't really want them. In the beginning I had a little bit of problem getting the shape down for the handle, but I wanted it to feel kind of like a little blocky stone type concept, and I really had my concept art up on my other monitor the whole time I was sculpting this, and so I was constantly looking over at my concept and saying, okay, how do I realize that in 3D? So at this point it's just I was getting a little bit too obsessed with the details at this point, and I think I eventually started to move on to other parts. But as artists, sometimes one little thing really bugs you, and the idea is that I don't let it become a bottleneck in my pipeline, so I visit it later and I just keep moving on. So from here I'm just coming in with that flat, the hard edge brush, and just smoothing stuff out, flattening edges where I need it to be flat, and making it feel like a blacksmith really put this thing together. Because essentially back, I'm assuming in their kind of world, in Dota's world, that a blacksmith is forging all of these weapons, so it needs to look like he was pounding it with hammer, or a sculptor was sculpting it out of stone. Whatever it may be, I need it to feel like it fit the universe. So the handle I just decided to scale up making it feel like I thought, okay, this handle's made of leather, it needs to have straps that go all the way around, and so that's why I kind of broke each strap off into its own smoothing groups. And then here again, in the beginning, I did get a little bit too obsessed with the details. But the idea is that I wanted to make a nice one so I could keep duplicating it and still, have a good starting point for the rest of the straps. From here, the biggest challenge was just trying to make them feel like they were leather that was wrapped around, and making them feel like they weren't the same. This is Bloodseeker we're talking about. He's not a perfect, I'm sure he doesn't really care if he tapes his weapon perfectly. It's probably going to be just good enough to go out and kill some more people in the game. Probably a rush job. I kind of tape my hockey stick the same way. So here is, kind of where I start breaking these parts down and really trying to start making them feel like they're made of stone or they've been chiseled out. With this part, I'm using the trim brush just to kind of trim out a little cut in the sword. I felt like that was a big design. It affected the silhouette of the weapon, so I played with that for a while, got it working. Tried doing it to other areas and just didn't have much luck. It wasn't quite working the way I wanted it to. So again, avoiding bottlenecks, skipping that for now and just moving on and say, okay, I'm going to get this handle done. That's my next big task. So I'm just, they're if you look on the right-hand side, they're each their own subtool, and I'm just kind of duplicating and moving and pushing and pulling as I see fit. And then eventually I'll go in there and continue sculpting the wrinkles. And the idea is that we don't make the wrinkles too small. I think I hit that at one point, because if we start getting in there into the small little details, based on the size of the texture map for a weapon and a character in Dota 2, we're not going to see these details. They're going to be just pixels big on the texture map. So the idea is that I'm not getting, I'm not subdividing them too much, and I'm not getting crazy with all the little tiny minute details. Most of it's, what does it look like from far away? I really got to pay attention to that. Having these big blocky leather handles. Because again, those handles are going to add to the silhouette, and I want to make sure that they do. So here I'm coming in with the clay tubes brush and just kind of laying out some lines for the wrinkles, and I think I ended up polishing them up a little bit, just playing with them for a while, getting them looking right. And at this point I was like, let's just put them all in the one subtool so I can just sculpt universally. And I think I eventually decided that was too much, so I smoothed it out again. And I'm quite happy with the results, and said, okay, these need to have some cuts in them. So just taking my /3 brush and slashing some cuts. I can hide part of them because they're all separate poly groups. So apologize for those of you that know ZBrush. But I'm kind of going into this whole series assuming that maybe not everybody knows ZBrush. We're not really using it for our main 3D tool right now, but it is, as you can see, a crucial part in the pipeline. If I were doing this without making a tutorial about it, I'd probably create this entire weapon in ZBrush probably without touching Max. It just allows me to work more like an artist, and of course always saving our progress. So you're going to want to make sure that you keep saving your stuff. And the cool part is you can see the little time slider up at the top. You can always go back in your undo history in this, and and I actually do that a few times. I start adding these cuts into the blade to make it feel like it's been through some battles and has damage. Again, making sure that they're not too small, that they're visible from far away. Otherwise, we don't really need them. But again, I think I ended up going back in my history and saying, okay, I added too many. It looks ridiculous. Let's carve it out. So I like these lines I'm trying to add. I couldn't get them working in ZBrush that well, so I think I'm actually going to use Undo to create a nice little, I don't know, some type of inner bevel there to kind of, I don't know, just add a little bit more detail to the blade. So all the sculpting I'm doing right now just kind of goes to waste. But at least it made me think through the process and know that, yeah, I should probably use Undo for this, and just keep going. Always changing my matte caps just to see what this looks like in a different light. And then I always check it with the normal matte cap just to see what this is, how is this going to translate into the normal map when I go bake. Is what I'm sculpting going to be visible? Because in the end, that's all that really matters. So now I'm just kind of moving on to other parts, revisiting the handle. Again, I think that was probably the biggest task on this, is just making sure the handle fit right and it looked right. Alright, so here we go with the, just flat brush and just polishing out the sides of the stones. It's pretty quick and simple process. It's quite fun to chisel things off, make it feel like stone. And so that's kind of what I'm doing here. Again, it doesn't take a whole lot of sculpting to get it from max to looking like this. It's pretty simple. So at this point, I'm pretty much done with this sculpt. I don't think it took, it didn't take terribly long. I don't think it took more than an hour. Yeah, I'm just kind of looking at it, what it looks like in different matte caps. And from here, we're going to go ahead and retopo this, create the game ready mesh, and then bake our textures. And finally, after that, importing it into the game engine. That's it for part 5. Thanks for watching.